It's Victory Friday. Welcome in, Packer fans, to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. They did it. They won in Arizona. What a game. You officially get to tell me I'm an idiot and I was wrong for predicting that the Cardinals were going to win. Certainly don't feel super awful about the prediction based on how the end of that game almost came to fruition, but thankfully it did not. I would much rather be wrong and the Packers win than right and the Packers loss a million times out of a million. So what a game. High drama, high intensity, two of the best teams. It did miss a little of that, pizzazz with DeAndre Hopkins kind of being out of the game. No J.J. Watt, no Zadarius Smith and Jair and, Adams and everyone else. Like, there was just a little something missing, but make no mistake about it. These were two of the best teams in the NFL on a short week, giving everything they had. It was an intense game. It was certainly full of drama at the end. There were moments that it felt like we're going to swing the game one way or the other throughout the entirety of this game. And Green Bay was able to get out of the desert with a win, becoming the best team in football. They have the best record in football. Most wins, least losses. They just beat the last undefeated team. What a game that it was. And the one thing I had right is I thought this was going to be a very entertaining game. And it certainly was that. And it lived up to the billing, one of the better Thursday night games we've had. And yeah, I mean, what more is there to say? Let's start with a couple things. Let's start with the play of the game and the player of the game, Rasul Douglas. It is crazy. It is crazy that Douglas was just on the Cardinals practice squad a few weeks ago. Packers signed Douglas. It's mostly a nondescript move. I don't think it really moved the needle all that much. But he comes in. Remember, this was going to be Isaac Yiadom 3 weeks ago against the Bears. It was Yiadom and it was Stokes and it was Sullivan in the slot. And I guess thankfully Yiadom completely blew it because in comes Rasul Douglas. And over the past 3 weeks, he has been fantastic. And it's incredible that the NFL has players like this that can come out of absolutely nowhere. Over the last 2 seasons, Douglas, both with the Eagles as well as the Panthers, allowed 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, a passer rating over 100, struggled with the Panthers a season ago. And I think people are thinking like, he was a Cardinal, he was on their practice squad and Green Bay just signed him. The Cardinals were his 3rd team. The Packers are his 4th team this year. He started with the Raiders. He was with their team, I think, from April to August. They released him in August. He goes from the Raiders to the Texans. The Texans couldn't find use for Rasul Douglas. They released him prior to the final cutdowns. The Cardinals pick him up, put him on their practice squad. He's been on their practice squad ever since. Packers signed him from the practice squad 3 weeks ago, and the rest is history. These are just the coolest stories, and to the point where Green Bay has some very interesting decisions as they start getting healthy at cornerback, because quite frankly, if the decision is between Rasul Douglas and Kevin King, I have seen 5 years of Kevin King. I've only seen 3 weeks of Rasul Douglas. I am ready to see more Rasul Douglas. And it's not to say that he's going to continue to be continue to do this well, but I'm willing to give him until he screws it up. Because through these 3 weeks, he has been aggressive as a tackler. He's been a breath of fresh air and just a ball of energy on defense. He's made plays. And this is more than just about the final play to end this game. He had a really nice game defensively throughout the entirety of this game. Gave up a few completions, almost always making the tackle right after. Had a questionable pass interference call late in this game. But overall, sticky coverage, intense player, physical tackler, and oh, by the way, made arguably the play of the season so far. I know it was a miscommunication between Murray and Green. Green wasn't even looking, but to adjust to that ball, sort of tip it to himself, make the interception, get both feet in, have the concentration to seal the game in that situation. What a massive play. I don't think we can necessarily call this a Rasul Douglas revenge game because up until that point, the Cardinals were the only team giving him a chance at least to be on the practice squad. So it's not like they were like doing him a disservice, but huge kudos and thank you to the rest of the NFL and specifically the Cardinals for not having him on an active roster because he has been a revelation at corner for the Packers. There's no way that they have won these last 3 games, in my opinion. Maybe they win 2 out of 3. I don't think they win this game, certainly, without Rasul Douglas. If the difference is Douglas to Isaac Yiadom, they're just, the drop-off is real. Let's put it that way. It's incredible. It's nothing short of incredible. And again, this is way more than just one game. It's 3 games, and it's more than just one play. He played a really nice game through the entirety of this one and made the play of the game and was the player of the game for the Packers. And oh, by the way, not the only former Cardinal to play well in this game, Devondre Campbell. I mean, we're running out of things to talk about this linebacker. How many linebackers, Packers linebackers over the past few decades are able to spy a player like Kyler Murray, and then when he takes off, make a sack in the backfield and don't let him get that momentum and make the play right away? There are a few, if any. Maybe Nick Barnett makes that play, but there are few Packer linebackers. I know there's some that maybe have the athleticism, but the tackling ability, the consistency, the ability to make plays in the backfield. He ends up with 7 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack. Like, he's all over the place again. Did have a rare missed tackle towards the end of this game on Edmonds that allowed that big play that almost set up the game-winning touchdown, but I think you're willing to have a tad bit of accident forgiveness for Devondre Campbell, the way that he has played so far this season and certainly played another game. Thank you to the Cardinals for not having room on their active rosters for either Devondre Campbell or Rasul Douglas. Again, I'm not necessarily ready to call these revenge games yet, but man, those 2 players stepped up huge against their former teams. And it just goes to show you, like, Brian Gutekunst talks about it, roster building being a 365-day-a-year endeavor, but finding a guy like Rasul Douglas off a practice squad, Devondre Campbell basically off the free agent scrap heap on a 1-year, $2 million deal. Those are the type of moves. If you want to be a Super Bowl contending team, even if you've got good players, you need your scouting staff to step up and find you a couple guys throughout the course of the year that can help you. And Green Bay has done that from Corey Bojorquez at punter, Devondre Campbell at linebacker, Rasul Douglas. They've tried things like Jalen Smith, who was inactive for this game, but kudos to the scouting staff, to Brian Gutekunst for finding these players, to Aaron Rodgers for finding Randall Cobb, who had another couple touchdowns in this game as well. The players that they picked up played huge in this game, and it's a huge reason why Green Bay was able to exit the desert with a victory over the previously undefeated Arizona Cardinals. Of course, this game was just as much about who didn't play in the game as who did play in the game. Dominique Dafney was reinstated prior to the game. He played a nice game and opened up some of those holes for Dillon and Aaron Jones as the game went on. Juwan Winfrey was activated from the practice squad, as was Ben Braden. But Jalen Smith, as I mentioned, inactive, was a healthy scratch in this game. Not super surprising to me. He struggled both of the last 2 weeks. Still, to me, is a step down below both Oren Burks and Chris Barnes. Yes, I believe that. And a far cry from Devondre Campbell. And he doesn't play special teams. McDuffie and Summers do. So that's why they need those guys active, and Smith is not going to be until something changes and he starts playing better or starts playing special teams. Kevin King inactive, still due to injury. No Bakhtiari, no MVS. Neither of them were activated. No Adams, Lazard, or Barry due to COVID. No Jair Alexander, no Zadarius Smith. That's a ton of players and a ton of credit to Green Bay. And the structure of this team, Matt LaFleur at coach, the leadership of the players, to have a team like this that's missing so many players. Imagine telling any team in the NFL that going into a Thursday night road game, short week, against an undefeated team, and you're going to be without, defensive coordinator, top 3 wide receivers, starting left tackle, starting center Josh Myers, your best edge rusher in Zadarius Smith. Let's see, what else can we fit? Like, top 2 corners, arguably, in Kevin King. Maybe not Kevin King as your top 2, but either way, however you want to argue it. And then Jair Alexander. Then, of course, you had the other injuries that happened throughout the course of the game. To be able to go through that and still come away with a victory in that circumstance it's incredible. And a lot of credit goes to this coaching staff, this team, this organization for being able to pull that off, because not a lot of teams are good enough to compete with their full 53, period. Look at the Texans, look at the Jets, look at, you know the teams, right? Green Bay has all of these injuries to key players, and they're still 7-0 in their last 7 games. Number 1 in the NFL. It's unbelievable, and they deserve a ton of credit. Speaking of players who deserve a ton of credit, A.J. Dillon, bounce back week from a week ago, had his worst game as a pro, 2 fumbles, 1 loss, didn't do much outside of that. Could have dwelled on it, could have, been something that just lingered through the course of this game. No issues, no worries. There was the 1 ball that bounced away from him, but he was clearly down on the play. He ran hard. He ran physical. The 4th down run that he had to finish that run and get a first down, and then basically Jones doing the same thing to get into the end zone. I thought Dillon was really, really good in this game. He had opportunities, certainly, and there were holes. I thought the offensive line did a good job of run blocking, but there were also times where there wasn't much there. and he found ways to make something out of nothing. And as Aaron Rodgers mentioned in his post-game press conference, doing a much better job of running behind his pads. Teams sometimes need to make business decisions or players do as they're trying to make tackles against Dillon. I thought this was a really impressive performance, and he showed that, that last week was not going to linger. He's ready to move on, and he had a really nice game and arguably the MVP of the offense for the Packers. We do need to talk about the timeouts and clock management because that continues to be a major, major issue for Green Bay. You just can't have situations and circumstances, especially in the second half, where you're wasting all of your timeouts on poor clock management and you're just running through these things like they're a finite resource. They are not. And I can understand in the first half you need to call a timeout here or there, whatever. It'd be nice to have those if you want a 2-minute drive at the end, but it doesn't always come to fruition, and I can understand a little bit more. There is zero excuse for wasting timeouts in the second half. And, listen, if you're not lined up on defense and you need to call one, so be it. If you're deep in the opponent's, red zone and you don't want to take a 5-yard penalty, I can maybe somewhat understand it under certain situations or circumstances. If it's 4th and 1, you don't want to back up 5 yards and make it 4th and 6. I can understand it. But more often than not, yards you can get back. Timeouts you cannot. And most importantly, just don't let this happen. Don't let the poor management and mismanagement of the clock result in taking timeouts. Fix that first. But in the second half, even if it's not fixed and you still are coming across these issues, take the 5-yard penalty. You are Aaron Rodgers in a talented offense. You can get 5 yards back. Those timeouts are so valuable towards the end of the game, and you didn't have to look further than the end of this game when they ran out of timeouts and were misaligned and had to take a 5-yard penalty at the 1-yard line to push them back to the 6. It could have easily cost them the game. It's something that has to get cleared up. And if this is the first time it happened, it's maybe a small mention, but this happens week in and week out. And it's been an issue for Rodgers-led teams for some time. I don't think it's just Rodgers. I think it's a combination of things, but it's got to get cleaned up. Again, it easily could have cost Green Bay in this game. I think one of the big questions coming in were the wide receivers and who is going to step up. Of course, your top 3 wide receivers are out in this game. And unfortunately, I think the answer was really none of them. Green Bay's wide receivers combined for 10 catches, 64 yards, 2 touchdowns on 17 targets. That's 3.76 yards per attempt. That is bad, brutal bad. Like 3.76 yards per attempt to wide receivers is horrendous. So none of the receivers really stepped up. Winfrey had a fumble. Amari Rodgers had a wrong route run. Like there was some ugly stuff. Kudos to Randall Cobb for the 2 touchdowns in the red zone. That's still his game. I thought he did everything he could in the red zone to get Green Bay on the board and come away with points. But outside of that, they had to use Aaron Jones really almost as a pseudo wide receiver. Robert Tonyan was more involved until he got hurt. But the wide receivers didn't unfortunately step up. Give Arizona's defense some credit as well. But if you're looking for a big Amari game or a Winfrey game or anyone to really step up, it just unfortunately did not happen. It really forced Green Bay to kind of grind out some really long and tough drives. And kudos to them for doing it with, again, young receivers and tight ends who, DeGuara lined up in the wrong spot. You had Winfrey with a fumble. You had Amari Rodgers run the wrong route. Like those sort of things. And Rodgers in this offense just powered through it and put together some long drives and put up enough points to win this game. They did enough. They did what they needed to do to get a tough win against a very tough Arizona team. You could tell just how much Matt LaFleur was lamenting his red zone offense on the 2 drives that resulted in a total of 3 points. The one after the muff punt where they go pass from the 3-yard line and have to settle for a field goal. And then, of course, the very final drive that really kept Arizona in it by not getting in the end zone and going for it on 4th down, not converting and giving the ball back to Arizona deep in their own end zone. I understand. I would have liked to have seen more runs, but I understand not running into a goal line defense where they're set up to stop you. You go and look at even like that read option for Rodgers at the end. If he would have handed it off there, I forget if it was Dillon or Jones, but they would have been stuffed easily. So you have to call based on what the defense is giving you. I think he probably is lamenting some of the play calls, maybe trying something different. Execution's part of it. Offensive line needs to protect better. Receivers need to get off of their the corners and gain separation. That didn't exactly always happen, but you could tell how much it was. It bothered Matt LaFleur in his post-game press conference, and it's something that they still need to get better at. They weren't brutal by any means. I think they were in the red zone 5 times, 3 touchdowns, a field goal, and then the 1 turnover on downs, which they were very close to having the Aaron Jones touchdown. So it's not like they were super far off, but Easily the field goal off the muff punt and the last drive that resulted in no points could have cost Green Bay the game. And let's just be real here for a second. We've seen that movie script multiple times before for Green Bay, right? Had the opportunities inches away from closing that game out. Literal inches away from victory. They couldn't get it. Turnover on downs. Murray hits the big pass over the middle. Before you know it, they're down, I think, to Green Bay's 8-yard line. Some poor management to the clock, and then the miscommunication between AJ Green. Give credit to the Packers defense and Rasul Douglas for coming up with the big play at the end when I don't know how many of you, if you're being honest, were really expecting that. I think it felt like for a minute there was a foregone conclusion that Arizona was going to get in the end zone. And it's not always that we've seen Green Bay come up with a big stop and win the game for the team, and they did in this occasion, and they deserve a ton of credit for it. Again, starting with Rasul Douglas with the big pick in the back of the end zone. Turnover is a big key in this game. The Bojorquez punt that led to the muff punt. This is why Bill Belichick loves left-footed punters. It just comes off the foot a little bit of a different way and can cause confusion for returners. It looks like maybe that happened a little bit. They get the muff punt, which sets them up for, unfortunately, only a field goal, but they won the game by a field goal, so it's sort of important to have that. They also had the Henry Black interception, and then, of course, the Douglas interception at the end, so some huge game-changing moments for the defense and special teams. I thought Eric Stokes, we talk about Douglas, but Stokes has been interesting, right? Certainly has some areas where he still needs to clean up, needs to do a better job of locating the football, a little bit better ball skills. I think that goes without saying. Sort of trending in the wrong direction, 2 big touchdowns these last 2 weeks, but again, credit Stokes that after these 2 big plays last week and this week, he had good games after that. There wasn't much that Stokes gave up for the remainder of the game. You would like to see him maybe wake up a little bit earlier and not have to give up that huge play before starting to play solid football, but give him credit for having the short memory and still being able to play at a high level regardless. I thought he had a nice game after the interception, but certainly he's ahead of the rookie curve, but still has some things that he needs to turn up and figure out before he's going to be a complete corner. I'm not expecting him to be a complete corner at this point in his career, but you want to see him start learning from some of those mistakes so it doesn't remain a consistent issue moving forward. Of course, last but not least, still some key injuries in this game. Matt LaFleur didn't say that this was a season ender or a long-term injury for Bobby Tunyon. You could see it in his eyes. He didn't have to say it. And he said that he was, I forget what he said he was, I forget the exact terminology he used, but you could tell how disappointed he was. He was sick. I think he said that. I'm sick about Bobby Tunyon's injury. It sucks, man. Tunyon's worked so hard, and I know he hasn't had the greatest season so far this year. He had a couple big plays in this game, but to lose a player like that who was, should have been a Pro Bowl tight end a season ago, and still a key part of this Packers offense, it's going to fall on Josiah DeGuara, certainly Dominique Daphne, Mercedes Lewis, those guys to pick up the slack. I think they're capable of doing that, but it's a big loss for Green Bay's offense. Kylan Hill as well. I know he's just a number 3 running back, but this is a player that Green Bay has been raving about. You can tell they've been dying to get him on the field. He's been their kick returner, and he's had some nice returns. That's going to be a likely loss for them. He's on crutches after the game. I have a feeling he's going to miss some time. And then Kingsley Keke exits with a concussion as well. A fun, entertaining game. Wish I would have predicted it right the other day, but again, happy to be wrong. Feel free to blast me in the comments below. I will gladly take it for a Packers victory. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you enjoy the game. Hope you enjoy your victory Friday. Get a little bit of a extra, sort of mini bye here for Green Bay. Don't worry though. I'll be back here every single day breaking things down for you with anything and everything that's happening from a Packers standpoint. Hopefully we are out of the COVID woods for Green Bay and we don't have any additional positive tests coming up, and Green Bay can get to playing Kansas City a week from now and hopefully get, Alan Lazard and Devontae Adams and Joe Barry back and ready for Kansas City. But if not, they've certainly showed that they are capable of winning games with a variety of different players and deserve a ton of credit for that. Thanks for joining me. Always appreciate it. I'll be right back here tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.